interview, this conversation. So I have a Substack called States of Matter, and I mainly write memoir. I do personal writing, and oh, did I pause here? I do personal writing, and I've just created a writing community called the Story Space, where I really focus on helping people to adapt their personal experiences and to really use their personal life as a way to connect, as a way to build trust, um, just as a way to sort of like re-envision their life. So I wanted to start off with this quote, at which and in retrospect. So that's by Anais Nin. And Chris and I were just talking like before this, and it's so relevant, particularly to me as a memoir writer, but also to Chris, even though mainly considers himself a poet. So I thought we'd just kick off sort of with that idea. The idea of visiting or your life twice, revisiting a certain situation twice, and how that kind of shows up in your writing. Because really, like what we're looking at is how writing is an emotional release, and how we kind of like take these hard experiences in our life and write about them, and it really transforms them. So Chris, go ahead. You can introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Chris. Chris B. Wright is my Substack. And yeah, so I joined Substack in August of 2025. Basically, the whole reason I'm here is because my son Braden, we call him Bray Bray, he has many, many needs, and he's had a interesting hand that he was dealt with a rare genetic disorder. So Bray Bray is in a wheelchair, and he doesn't talk and he doesn't walk, but he's the happiest kid on the planet, and he's a shining light for all of us and everyone who gets to know him. And we've been through a lot over the past 12 years. He's going to be 12 in November. He had seizures when he was first 5 months old. It was a rare seizure disorder called infantile spasms.
Hmm.
And then after that, we had a lot of global delays, a lot of milestones that were missed, a lot of frustration about not knowing why this was happening. When he was 8 years old, we did a round of genetic testing for the second time. And that's when the rare genetic disorder popped up called GNAI1. He's one of only under 50 people in the world to have this disorder. It's a mutation of a mutation. 2 years ago, Braden was in the hospital when the seizures came back, and that was a 28-day hospital stay. And that was the most trying time of our lives. And we nearly lost him to that battle, but he pulled through and he persevered. And when you talk about writing life twice, we've lived life twice with my son. There was before the hospital visit and after the hospital visit, from 0 to 10 years old and from 10 to 12 years old. And in retrospect, the PTSD that I had from his hospital visit that I felt personally, I had no idea that it was as serious as it was until I joined Substack, started sharing his story, starting sitting with my emotions, starting to connect with other caregivers who helped me feel seen and less alone. And that's when I realized, wow, I went through a lot. And I am so thankful for the community here on Substack.
Yeah, thank you. And you do have a great community. I feel like like you were talking about, your chat is very active. You're really reaching out to your members a lot, and I think that's one of the amazing things about Substack as well. But I just wanted to welcome a few people here. So we have Roger just joined. Thank you guys for coming. Angela, Mandy, Steve, Jamie, Joe, Melly. Thank you so much for joining us. Gray. So as we talk, feel free to pop any a question or any comments you might want to add to the search bar, whatever that is, the chat.
Yeah.
My mind is like it's shorting out. So actually, like I have a few questions that I wanted to ask you because I read your latest post, like the one that you wrote. Like normally you write poetry, but you wrote this long form piece, basically kind of a memoir, where
Hmm.
you talk about how, how your life as a caregiver, and it really, like, you definitely get into that 28-day stay in the hospital.
Hmm.
So I kind of wanted to talk about that and what you learned. So you write about sitting in that hospital chair quietly, weakening inside. When did you first reach for writing during that crisis? And what did it give you that nothing else would? So how did writing really like help you in that moment?
Sure. So the post you're referring to is a guest post I did through I Grow Strong Again, which is one of Jeannie Ewing's publications. And thank you, Jeannie, for giving me the space to share. And the theme of the post was There is Grace in the Breaking. And it's about what I learned during that hospital visit. And what you're referring to is the writing in that hospital room from the hospital bed while my son is hooked up to a BiPAP machine to help him breathe, low blood pressure, low oxygen. It wasn't looking good. It was the first 7 days in the hospital were very traumatic, and that was the fight for his life, literally. And I remember the first week, probably the first 3 or 4 days, I couldn't even speak. I couldn't even function. We were just taking care of him, helping the nurses suction him, making sure he was comfortable. He was sleeping 23 hours a day. We were literally searching for any like twitch of a finger or sign of awakeness or improved numbers from his oxygen or his blood pressure or his heart rate, making sure the meds that they gave him, the antibiotics, were working. Because what happened was he had seizures that made his body too weak to fight off what ended up being an unidentified infection. So it was
Mm,
like this perfect storm that almost knocked him down for the count.
mhm,
So when you're a parent of a medically fragile child and this happens, it's very hard to really put into words.
mhm,
But my whole life, since as long as I can remember,
mhm,
I've been writing. I've been writing poetry. I've been gravitating towards song lyrics when I was a kid and reading the lyric sheets. I was a creative writing major in college. So for me, the one thing I had, my one saving grace during that first week in the hospital was okay, I can journal, I can write, I can take this wave of indescribable emotion and try to put a a a a stamp on it of like what's going on in my mind that's just so chaotic and so all over the place, and my heart is breaking and my soul is ripping apart. So it was probably the fourth or fifth day, where things were still unsure about which way it was going to go, and it was probably like 3 o'clock in the morning because we didn't really sleep anyway. And I just remember writing just in that moment to just help vocalize what I can't otherwise express.
mhm. Yeah. And I think, the way you expressed it in this piece, I read it and I read a lot of the comments.
Mhm.
There were some really long
Yeah.
comments, right? Like almost like uh, essays in their own right, reacting. So I feel like, in that writing, you really did revisit it and also helped other people, who have had that similar experience,
Yeah.
kind of revisit their situations as well. So there's sort of like not a camaraderie, but there's a kinship, I think, that people have, when they read something that really touches them because of a similar experience, or even just like there's a universal element to it. And it may not be the exact experience, but it may be just like
Mhm.
this sense of fear or the sense of loss, or whatever it is. So um how did you think that writing the prose, we talked about this a little bit, writing prose, how did that differ for you, than writing the poetry? Do you think it made you write it in a different way, or was there a different expression?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, I am a poet at heart, so I tend to say more with less, right? That's just how my brain is wired. Usually, if I'm naturally writing and I wake up and there's something there, it's usually in poetic form versus something longer. So when Jeannie Ewing and I first met each other, it was through Substack. She has a daughter named Sarah, who's one of her five children who has a rare condition called Apert syndrome. So Sarah and Braden are around the same age, and we connected over our basically being caregivers in arms, right? And having
Mhm.
that kinship as you just referenced. So she invited me to collaborate and write this guest post for her channel, I Grow Strong Again. And so this was an opportunity for me to stretch my comfort zone and actually sit down with my emotions in a longer form that I don't normally write in.
Mhm.
And for me, it really brought out something in me that my poetry cannot, in the sense that I was more descriptive about the hospital room, more descriptive about the things that were going on around me, more descriptive about every piece of his journey, like rewinding back to when he was first born, fast forwarding to what's going on now, his
Mhm.
resilience, our healing. I kind of put all of my poems that I've written, if I put 40 of them together, it kind of tells this story that I
Mhm.
told in this memoir driven piece. So
Mhm.
I think without the poems I had written already, I wouldn't have been able to get to the point of sharing this story as descriptively as I did. But what I like about it is it has kind of like the best of both worlds, where I wrote about what was going on, but there's still, if you look at the some of the lines in there is poetry in there too. Like
Mhm.
there's one line that sticks with me when we found out about his genetic disorder, and it basically was, "There is no cure, only care." And for
Mhm.
me, that's a poem right there. That can be a poem. And that's one of the lines that to me really speaks to what we've gone through over the past 12 years is, you know, caring for him, knowing that there is no cure, that these milestones won't be met, that, his life is different. And it took me a very long time to grieve the life he would have had and
Mhm.
embrace the life he does have. And looking back and doing this in retrospect was a very profound experience for me too.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I like that you talked about, that you've revisited this. Like, so you've written poems, you've now written the prose, and I think people, a lot of people do that in life. Like they're circling an experience all the time, and like sometimes they're writing about it, sometimes they're thinking about it, or they're telling people about it. And I think it's always so important to like consider why. Like, why is this the memory? Why is this the thing that you continue to, return to? I mean, it seems obvious for your situation, and you like just explained quite a bit of it. But are there like other moments in your life, do you think, that like that you've picked out that you kind of like you find that you return to, or they become like motifs in your writing or in your poetry?
Yeah, I think so. Most of my writing over the past 2 years, especially, has been very focused on my role as a caregiver to
Hmm.
Braden. But if you look at my poetry, there's also the a lot of references or metaphors to the analog era that I grew up in
Hmm.
versus the world that we're in now. So there's one poem I wrote called Reconcile,
Hmm.
and it was kind of like me as a kid and Braden as a kid.
Hmm.
And the similarities are, we both had a familiar toothless smile and we're both cared for by our parents. But then the difference is one of the lines in the poem is, I took so much for granted back then, running around under yellow streetlights, because that's what we did in the 80s and 90s, running around, go outside and don't come back until dinner. That's what our parents would tell us. They knew where we were because the neighborhoods were different back then. But the point is like, I took so much for granted as a kid, running around freely, and then my son
Mhm.
can't walk. So it's kind of like that reconciliation of his childhood, my role as a father, and how I viewed my parents when I was a child. So, there are themes like that as well, where I kind of look back to some of those moments of my life. And it's funny, it's not usually anything crazy dramatic, but these specific grounded images that I have from my childhood that are like embedded in me. And then like using that as an anchor to maybe some of the emotional connection that I have to today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm about your age. Actually, I think I'm a little older than you. I'm a like Generation X, like not even an elder millennial. I'm like full Gen X. But yeah, and I relate to that, like the idea of writing about like your childhood and those like memories that are like moments, like they're
Mhm.
very sensory. Like it might be um like a flash of like being on your bike. I remember I had this moment where I was like, I delivered newspapers and I would throw the newspapers out the door, and this dog came like running out, and I had to like lift my feet up to, so like so he wouldn't bite me as I ran down the, or bike down the street. So these moments just really, I think they're fun to write about too,
Mhm.
right? Because you're just sharing this like little tiny explosion that is like this vortex in your mind that takes you back to those memories. So I don't know, maybe this would be a good time for you to read one of your poems now, and we
Sure.
can chat a little bit more since we're
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, that's fine. So one of the poems I really wanted to read, it's kind of like if I was gonna put one poem out there that's like what happened in the last 2 years, this would be the poem I would read to kind of share this situation. It's almost like a mini memoir in a poetry
yeah.
form. So this poem is called Last Rites. The first week felt like last rites, not the kind whispered through stained glass by a trembling priest, the kind performed by fluorescent lights that never shut off, by monitors coughing alarms into the middle of the night, by the attending speaking softly outside the room like volume could soften impact. 26 days in the pediatric ICU. That first week, where sleep became rumor, where coffee tasted like pennies, where my wife and I learned the geography of panic, which hallway to pace, which vending machine still worked after midnight, which nurse looked you in the eyes instead of at the chart. I watched machines breathe beside him like they were God. 10 years of battles stitched into his frame, still enough to make the world feel wrong. This boy who survived seizures before he learned sunlight and endured diagnoses stacked taller than him. Language built like gravestones. And still, he found a way to live. Clapping his hands to the beat, laughing from somewhere deeper than suffering. But that week, he slept. I studied every twitch like scripture. Outside the hospital, people still bought groceries, still argued in traffic, still worried about weather. Inside that room, the universe narrowed to one heartbeat. All my hustle, all my fix it instincts locked out by monitors, and yet I told him stories, praying he heard under the fog. Summers at Woodlock Pines, music therapy with Alicia, Sunday dinner with Grandma and Grandpa. How there are still people he hasn't made smile yet. On the eighth day, morning light, weak and pale, barely peeking through the window I nearly closed. Eyes open, not halfway, not involuntary. And then his one smile, Bray Bray, soaring back to the surface. He looked at me purposefully, like he hadn't spent the past 7 days standing ankle deep at the edge of a future I wanted no part of, like he came back to comfort us. And I broke like a dam, finally admitting it was never built to hold this much love. That smile said everything his voice never could. I'm still here, Dad. The machine sounded different, defeated. A quiet miracle draped in a hospital gown too big for his body. The boy who can't talk but answered death with a grin. 2 years later, I still hear alarms when the house goes quiet. We are never too far from the woods. But I also remember that morning he sat up and brought me back with him.
Ooh, Bray Bray. That's beautiful. I
Thank
love there's so many great images that stand out to me, like the pennies, coffee that tasted like pennies, and the geography of panic.
mm,
Yeah, I really love that. And I love how you were able to like kind of like change the passing of time. You know, it's like slowing in the
mm.
room, but it's passing probably quicker
Yeah,
outside. So yeah, it's really beautiful. And
thank
you mentioned that that one's going to be published, right? Is this one of the ones that's
Well, this one's in my book that I'm trying to get published. I have a 3 pack of poems. I just found out 20 minutes before we went live
Mhm,
that is being published by the Alchemist's Cabin, which
mhm,
they are on Substack. And the 3 poems that I have, it's a 3 pack of poems: Above Water, Another Anagram, and Palimpsest with Plastic Knobs. So
mhm,
those are being published together as a 3 pack in end of July, early August.
mhm. Oh, congratulations. And you and I had that little quick chat before we came live that about, this idea of Substack and how people are on Substack to publish and get validated. But I think we're also searching for our words to have to go farther and broader, right? So, I'm like that as well. Like I want to publish my writing, and I'm actually self-publishing my book. So what do
Mm.
you think? Like, how do you think searching for a larger audience does that kind of change the way you think about your writing, or like, what do you think motivates you to want to, you know, put your work out there for publication?
Sure. So I always write for an audience of one. I
Hmm.
never worry about the metrics. I never worry about who's reading and who's, uh, you know, kind of like there on the other side, because I want it to be as authentic as possible.
Hmm.
And even if nobody was reading, I'd still be writing because I've written my whole life, right?
Right.
But the whole reason I'm doing this, and I've said this a few times over the past few months, I truly feel that it is my calling as Braden's dad to give my voice to him because
Hmm.
he cannot speak for himself.
Yeah.
So I always joke around that the poems that I'm writing is like the gospel of Bray Bray.
Yeah.
And it's just my way of giving back to him what he's given me, which is this transcendent smile that lights up the world. And I thought it was time to share his story with other people,
Hmm.
because as caregivers, we can feel so alone and isolated. And I want him to be a shining light like he's been for me, for people who are underwater and having trouble seeing that light.
Yeah.
And the other reason I'm writing and publishing and putting myself out there is I feel like caregiving is grossly underrepresented in the literary space,
Yeah.
because so many caregivers are underwater and don't have the time or the ability or the circumstances to be able to really put these traumatic experience that they're having into words. And I just feel like I want to help other caregivers feel like they're not alone and that they can have a voice too.
Right. Yeah. So you really feel like you have like a calling and a mission,
Mhm.
not just for Bray Ray's voice, but also to
Mhm.
really, I like the idea of, you know, almost creating a subgenre for
Mhm.
caregiver, because you're right. Like, I don't think I've ever read a book or a poem or, anything about caregivers because they are just like overwhelmed.
Yeah, and
And
me. In fact, my friend Jeannie and I, Jeannie Ewing and I, are working on something that we're excited to announce in the fall. That is exactly that. So stay
Yeah, I
tuned.
mean, it's a really good idea. So
Mhm.
I'm sure a lot of people would love to read it. I mean, not just people that are doing, that
Yeah.
are caregivers, but just in general, because I mean,
I
it's
just think it's
very,
a
it's,
I just think it's a universal experience in
yeah.
the sense of everyone has trauma, everyone has their own things that they've had to sort through. So it's the caregiving aspect and the parenting aspect, and also the people that are most of the people that reach out to me are the sandwich caregivers where they have their own kids and then their parents get sick,
Mhm.
and then the dementia and all that kind of stuff. So there's so much there,
Yeah.
and it's just so underrepresented.
Yeah. And you're right. It can be quite a universal, right? Because they're deep feelings. They're based on often trauma or deep relationships with the people they're caregiving that are very relatable, especially, parent to child or child to parent. So, yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of potential for an amazing, subgenre. Well, we're at 4:25. Let me take a quick look and see. Thank you again for joining us.
Hi,
We
Kelly.
have,
Hi, Florence. Hi, Joe.
yeah, who we have new is Blue Songstress just joined, and Gray. I know Gray was there. Thank you all for joining us, and for being interested in this topic, which I'm so sure a lot of people, use their writing to express their emotion, and I mean, I do as well. I think, for as long as I've lived, I've definitely like written in my journal, and that journal was, my first way to vent, and my first
Mhm.
that journal's the first thing that heard all of my pain and my fears and whatever. And I think, like, I actually started my memoir because I picked up a journal that I had written, 15 years earlier, at the time when I was living in the Middle East. And I read through it, and I wrote like almost every day for a year, because I moved to Bahrain, and I'm in the Middle East, and it's like the experience was so different than anything I'd ever known. So I was like writing every single day. Um, and when I read it, I was like, "Who is this woman?" Like, I didn't like I didn't even almost recognize. I mean, I could recognize myself, but not really. Like, it was so um different, and the like what was going on was so like compartmentalized from who I was now at that time, which was 5 years ago. So I really like decided to write my memoir based on that, because I wanted to not only explore that time, but like I wanted to reclaim it, like, because I was really compartmentalizing my life, and not allowing it to bleed together, and to learn, from those moments and experiences. So I've learned a lot over the past 6 years of writing this memoir, but it sounds like your writing is very much like, I wouldn't say it's memoir based, but you're writing about your experiences with your
Mhm.
family. Um, so do you think you'd ever, like, I don't know, write a memoir, or do more personal writing like you did with?
Yeah. So currently, I feel like the last rites poem that I just read kind of put a cap on 2 years of my journey, and that's the completion of my poetry book,
Yeah.
which I'm now looking at trying to get published.
Hmm.
So that's like almost like the closing of a chapter there, and I'm going to really focus on trying to get that, into the right hands and find the right home for it. And it is in the hands of an editor right now. We'll see. Not guaranteed anything. And then after that, I'm open, right? I'm open to writing longer form pieces. I'm open to more collaborations. I did a really cool collaboration a couple weeks ago. Singer
Hmm.
songwriter Becca Roth on Substack liked one. Yeah, she liked one of my poems, and then I was like, Becca, you want to turn it into a song? And she turned it into an original song, and we did a cross post together. So my poem 604 Daydreams was a short poem. She turned it into a really awesome short song. So I just love that kind of stuff too. And
Yeah.
Becca did another one today with somebody else, and I told her you got to do an album of poems turned to songs. It would be amazing.
I'm gonna catch her.
She's great.
I want her to
Look
do
up,
some of my poems.
yeah,
I
look
mean,
up Becca
I
Roth.
heard that it was
Yeah,
really good.
yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it was such a short little. It was like only a minute, but it was
Yeah.
so. It was like the way she
Mhm.
said the lyrics. It was
Oh,
just.
she's incredible.
It was like I wouldn't have read the poem that way, but it
Yep.
made so much
Yep.
sense, and the music behind it like added such a deeper.
My favorite line in that poem is singing Ben Folds off key, I'm proud of me. Because it's just like you're taking the stage at karaoke and you don't care how you sound. You just want to get out there and do it.
Yeah,
And like that was just like a confidence thing. Like
yeah,
I just love that line. And she
yeah.
nailed it. Oh my God, she did amazing.
Yeah, and she managed to sound like it was just like she just picked up her guitar and just like
Yep.
did it at the same time that it was also just sort of like perfect. So it
She
was like,
literally told me she did it in one take while her son was sleeping.
oh yeah, it's really good.
So
You
that's just
have
how
it.
that's how talented she is, and she
Yeah.
just captured that like
What's her
raw.
name again? What's her
Becca
Substack?
Roth,
Becca
Becca Roth,
Becca Raw.
Beccaroth. Look her up, subscribe. She's incredible.
Yeah, I think I subscribed to her when I heard that because I was like, dang. Because I'm
Yeah,
kind of sick of hearing people like do AI songs. I was
yeah,
like,
it was
it's a
cool to
real
like
voice.
really. It was really cool that both her and then another Substacker, Hi-Fi Amateur, he did my poem Alpenglow, and he did an original song to that as well. So I just love collaborations like that, and just being a music fan who can't play music, to have these people reach out and like want to work together is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, poets are lyricists. I mean,
Hmm.
ultimately. So, I mean, it makes total sense. So, if you're a musician, get in touch.
Yeah,
Chris do his poetry.
let's do it.
And me too. I write poetry as well, but I, I wrote a lot of poetry in high school and college, and
Yeah.
then so I was in college in the '90s, like early '90s,
Hmm.
and I would go and do poetry readings. Like, I don't know if that was a thing at the time or what, but I
Yeah,
was,
it was like the
you know,
slam poetry and then the
yeah,
open
it wasn't,
mics,
yeah, it
coffee
wasn't really
shops.
slam poetry. It
No,
was,
I know. They had like,
but
yeah.
yeah, it could have been. I mean, but this was just like take your poems and,
Mm,
go read in coffee shops. And, but I remember it was just like so empowering. And so, like, it really shifted me from like just thinking like that poetry was just like my
mhm.
little thing to
Yeah.
seeing how it like affected people.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
it was so early in my writing career, but it definitely, you know, affected me and pushed me in the
Mhm.
direction to write more.
Yeah,
So
shout out to the Cup in Wantagh, Long Island. That's where we had these poetry readings or the singer-songwriters with their guitar.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so amazing. I think this is why I really love Substack. It's like people are out here just sharing their work, and it's so like some of it is just so good. It's so like it's so raw, it's original, it's interesting, and there are so many ways to share your writing and that are free, that are helpful to other people. Like it doesn't have to be published by some big named
Yeah.
publisher. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. But
No, it's true.
so
There's like
yeah.
there's another woman, Zoe. However I grow, she does art poems.
Mhm.
Those are so cool to see. Where she shapes the poem with so the words are also art. Like it's just cool, like the way people are doing it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I like I wrote it's kind of like a lyric essay about like I'm from Kansas, so it was all about storms and
Oh, nice.
sort of like a tornado, and but it was also dealing or showing this relationship that I have with my stepfather and how I used to have to go out and like cut a switch. So bad. But anyway, like I wrote that and then I turned it into a poem because as I was reading it, I was like, man, this is just it
Mm.
just called for it to be like more compressed. So I have both. No, it's amazing. So I don't know where I am in my questions. What else should we talk about? Should we do another reading?
Yeah, if
You
you
want to read
want.
something else?
Yeah,
It's
I have the poem Above Water, which was just accepted for publication. Uh,
yes.
so I'd love to read that, and I think it speaks to the caregiver's journey.
Yeah.
So this one is called Above Water.
Okay.
It took a lot to get here, not distance, depth, the kind you don't measure in miles, but in mornings that begin before you're ready and nights that refuse to end cleanly. It took a lot to get here, to this place where my feet still touch ground, even though the water keeps rising. Cool and quiet, pretending not to ask questions. Caregiving teaches you this posture: knees bent, weight forward, eyes trained on the surface for signs of trouble or grace, or both arriving at once. I didn't wade in bravely. I stepped in because someone I love was already surrounded, because standing on shore felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. The water presses in on my thighs, my ribs, the old confidence I used to wear without thinking. Some days it reaches my chest, and breathing becomes a deliberate act, counted, negotiated. But still, I'm upright. Above water doesn't mean dry, it doesn't mean safe. It means choosing presence over escape, balance over panic, staying when every instinct says, float away. There are moments the lake goes still, the surface turns honest, mirroring a version of me I barely recognize. Tired, yes, but steady. It took a lot to get here, to learn that strength isn't muscle or optimism or pretending this is easy. Strength is knowing how to wade without disappearing, how to keep your head up without hardening your heart, how to remain visible while carrying someone else's weight. I don't walk out of the water yet. I don't need to. For now, being above water is enough.
Nice. Yeah, that one sounded really like um you were working through this idea of like what strength is, like what a
Hmm.
strength is to you and what it is for for anybody really. Because I think
Hmm.
it's your understanding of strength probably changed quite a bit from the time, you had, bravery to the time, like whatever after the whole 28-day
Yeah.
hospital
Hmm.
stay, everything. Because I mean, being a parent changes you regardless. It doesn't matter like what happens with your
Yeah.
child. Like parenthood is just like it reshapes you in ways like you can't understand until you become a parent. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think there's a raw honesty here in the line. I didn't wade in bravely. I stepped in because someone I love was already surrounded, because standing on shore felt like a luxury I couldn't afford.
yeah,
Because people think, oh, you're a caregiver, you're so strong. It's not like we want to be, right? So I always tell people, don't mistake our strength for obligation. So
yeah.
of course I'll jump in, but that doesn't mean I wanted to. And then the other thing I wrote in the memoir with Jeannie was, I used to think strength was doing, but now I know strength is being.
Yeah.
And that that being present in that moment and not floating away. My wife Melanie and I joke around all the time, like we had two choices, right? Embrace the situation or go on a drug bender in Mexico. So we chose to embrace the situation.
Yeah. And it's acceptance, right? I think
Hmm.
just accepting a situation, that takes more strength than almost anything, right? Because there's just like layers and layers and layers that you have to get through before you really like hit the bottom and know that you have truly accepted it. And maybe you don't. Maybe maybe you never hit the bottom,
Yeah.
but you can feel yourself going through the layers and like moving through the situation and finding it, finding yourself accepting it more and more. And that's when the load, I feel like the load gets lighter. The load starts to ease up because you are just accepting that you're there and maybe that's where you're supposed to be. Maybe that's where you're supposed to be, being a voice for your son and,
Hmm.
a voice for other people in your situation. So who
Yeah,
knows?
I mean, that's exactly how I feel now is,
Mm.
I got through some really hard times. And listen, I want every person to know it's okay to feel anger, frustration, grief, sadness. Just because you're a caregiver doesn't mean you're not allowed to have those moments of breaking. And then, that's mixed with, of course, the joy and what he's taught us. But it took me the first 9 or 10 years to really give myself permission to feel those feelings. And
Mhm.
once I gave myself permission to feel those feelings, that weight was lifted. And I was like, you know what? I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to always be on, you
Yeah.
know? So that was my big mistake the first 10 years, was mistaking perfectionism for strength when really I need to break down and then come back stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that you said that was my first mistake. That for 10 years,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think people feel like you have to like make a mistake, fix it, and then just be better. Like, and never
Yeah.
make the same mistake over and
Yeah.
over again. And it's like I mean that's what my book ultimately is about. I mean, it's about
Mhm.
being in the Middle East, but it's also about making the same mistakes over and over and
Mhm.
over and over again.
Yeah.
Until you finally learn, it's like my life just was like a spiral of
Yep.
me like being in different situations but making the exact same mistakes. And I think that's just our lot in life. Like, that's just how we learn.
1
And
million percent.
yeah, I mean, thank God we have our writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Or we
looking
could
forward
like,
to, I'm
or
looking
our
forward
art.
to, I'm looking forward to reading what you come out with, because that sounds very fascinating. So
Yeah, my memoir is called Lesson Unplanned, and it's going to be out in September. So
awesome.
talking a lot about it. Yeah, it took me a long time to write, long time to finally decide that I was going to put it out there. Like, it's a lot because it's very personal. I share a lot.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, really, am I going to do this? But
That means, you know what though? That mean being uncomfortable about it means it's going to be awesome.
yeah,
Like that's where the raw, real stuff is. So that makes me want to buy it even more.
yeah, yeah. And it's like I was finished. Well, I thought I was finished with the book like over a year ago, but I kept going back to it. I'm like, no, this isn't it. Like, I got to go deeper, and people would
Mhm.
read it and they're like, but like, there's something else, So I kept like going,
Yeah.
going deeper and deeper. And I
Mhm.
probably could still be writing it, but I think, I got to the level where I felt like it was like hitting bone for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
felt it. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Once you get to that point, then of course
I felt the
you know.
shovel hitting bone.
Yeah,
I
like
was like,
you know when it's like, oh, we hit the gravestone, we're good, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think what would you say to people who, they're writing about their lives, they're writing about to get out their emotions.
Hmm.
Like, what would you say to people who are writing like that and may want to take it to another level?
I would say there's no wrong way to do it other than not being honest with yourself. And don't forget that you can write right now. You can write everything you want. And that doesn't mean you have to publish all of it. Just
Yeah.
the emotional release that we're talking about is
Yes.
so helpful. So, yeah, you can go back and edit something later, but give yourself permission to go there, to
Yeah.
dig, 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 dig. And you'll be surprised with some of the emotions you're feeling, but also some of the gems you find. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's necessary. And I think, people can feel it, like it's not in the word. I mean, it's in the words, but it's also like there's some kind of energy that is
mhm.
translated or pushed through when you're really writing from your heart. I think like people can feel it and they know it, and that's why you
The
know
other the
next
other
them.
advice the other advice I would give, and I think this is very important, read your work out loud after
Mhm.
you do it twice. Once right after you're done writing it, and then take like a few days or whatever, and then do it again, because it's like that visceral reaction of like, oh my God, right? And then a week later, if you still feel that, then that means you got it. Because I just reread the memoir yesterday out loud to myself,
Mhm.
that I posted with Jeannie, and I wrote it a few months ago, and I reread it, and I'm like, holy crap! Like, wow! Like I was in tears myself, like
Yeah.
just reading it out loud again, and like I just encourage that as an exercise. I think it's very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And like that's what I did. I read my entire memoir. Like
Mhm.
I thought I was done, and this was after like I hit bone and
Yep.
everything. And
Mhm.
my editor went through it, and this was supposedly the final copy. And she's
Mhm.
like, "Read it out loud." I'm like, "It's 75,000 words." Like
Yeah.
really, but I just found one of those online, things, and it
Yep.
read it aloud to me, and it was, kind of bad because it was an AI voice, but it
Yeah.
really helped. Like it helped me hear some
Yep.
things. Like I caught a few errors, but I also caught a few moments where I'm like, wait a minute.
Mhm.
That didn't sound honest, or that sounded weird, or what's, and it helps. Yeah, I agree. That's great
Yeah.
advice. Get out, read it out loud. Read it to your dog,
Yeah.
your kids. I read a poem to my entire family the other day. There's like captive at the dinner table.
That's
It's like,
amazing.
how about a poem, you guys?
Oh, you want more meatballs first? Here's
First,
chapter 3.
I know, I know. Well, I think it's part of the writing. I'm an English teacher, and we teach writing as a process. And then I used to teach it like, okay, you brainstorm, you're writing, you're editing, and then it kind of stopped there once they got to the final draft. And like, I finally realized, like, no, these kids need to put their writing out there. Like, somebody has to read it. They have to publish it in some way,
Mhm.
whether it's just reading it in front of the class or posting it online somewhere. Like, we got to
Yeah.
get to that part because
Mhm.
we're not closing the loop unless we're doing that. So, all right. Well, it's kind of the time that
Yeah, of
we said, and I do have my thing at 5. But thank you so much for coming
course.
along, and our thank you to all of our viewers. We really
Joe, thank
appreciate
you for all
you.
your kind words. She was very
Oh,
active.
did I miss Joe's
Joe had some
comments?
really nice comments. Jamie said, great advice. I just finished my memoir. Will read it to myself now.
Oh, okay,
Hi,
good. Okay,
hi, Maria. Traumadelics by Maria.
I'm so bad at
Joe
doing.
said, people on Substack are so rad. Yeah, so I just appreciate all the love and support.
Yeah, Joe was, I think she was picking out lines she liked. Oh, we liked the two same lines. Geography of Panic, The Taste of Pennies, Language Like Gravestones, One Heartbeat, One Smile. Oof, my heart feels all of this. Joe is amazing. We went to write Doe Bay together. It was a big writing conference in Washington. It was so fun.
Oh,
But thank
great.
you all for posting comments and hearts, and we really, really appreciate it. Oh, so true. Thanks for providing a voice for so many people. Who is that? Traumadelics by
And
Maria
hi, Kelly. Kelly, you're amazing. You
Lisa.
know I love you.
Yes. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you for reading. And again, my name is Michelle Ray. You can find my publication here on Substack. It's called States of Matter. And of course, it's Crispy Writes, and that's his same name for his publication. And yeah, look for his songs with Rue, Becca Roth. And yeah, just, we'll see you. Thanks again, and take care, everyone.
Take care, guys.